Savannah has a future. You don't. My father didn't even blink as he threw the blood-stained car keys into my lap. Go to the police station. Tell them you were driving the Porsche tonight. When I tried to stand up, he shoved a piece of paper in my face. It was a transfer form for a state nursing home known for neglect. I've already signed it, he said coldly. If you don't take the fall for your sister, the ambulance comes at 8 a.m. to take Grandma away. And we both know she won't survive a week in a place like that. Before I tell you what I did with those keys and the secret weapon I'd been hiding for 3 years, drop a comment below. What's the most unreasonable thing a family member has ever asked you to do? I want to see if anyone can take the fall for a hit and run. I drove the Porsche back to the family estate in silence, the engine purring beneath the hood as if it hadn't just shattered a stranger's hip bone. My father wanted the car scrubbed before the police impounded it the next morning. He wanted the narrative controlled. He wanted me to be the good little janitor I'd always been. My name is Rachel. And at 27 years old, I had become the invisible infrastructure of this family. I wasn't the brilliant one, or the beautiful one, or the successful one. I was the one who knew how to get red wine out of silk, and how to apologize to board members when my father lost his temper. They called me the cleaner when they were being funny, and the spare when they were being honest. Tonight, in the harsh fluorescent light of the 6-car garage, I was living up to both titles. I pulled on a pair of yellow rubber gloves and started on the steering wheel. The leather was sticky. I didn't let myself think about whose blood it was. If I thought about the victim, I would fall apart. And I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. I needed to be precise. The side door banged open, and Savannah stumbled in. She was still wearing the silver cocktail dress from the party, though now it was torn at the hem and smelled like tequila and vomit. She leaned against the doorframe, watching me scrub her mess. You missed a spot, she slurred, pointing a manicured finger at the dashboard. God, you're so slow. Even when you're cleaning up my life, you take forever. I didn't look up. Go to bed, Savannah. Don't tell me what to do, she snapped, pushing off the wall and swaying dangerously. You think you're so noble, don't you? Saving the day. But we both know why you're doing it. It's because it's the only thing you're good for. Cleaning up after the people who actually matter. She laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. Make sure you get the floor mats, Rachel. I think I spilled my drink when I hit him. I stopped scrubbing. My grip on the sponge tightened until my knuckles turned white. She wasn't traumatized. She wasn't sorry. She was annoyed that her night had been ruined by the inconvenience of nearly killing someone. Go inside, I said, my voice low. Dad wants the car ready by sunrise. Yeah, just do your job. She turned and stumbled back toward the house, muttering about how she needed a Xanax. As the door clicked shut, I dropped the sponge. I peeled off the yellow gloves and reached into the deep pocket of my oversized hoodie. I pulled out a quart-sized Ziploc bag. I hadn't been scrubbing the steering wheel to clean it. I had been using a pair of tweezers to pull long strands of blonde hair. Savannah's hair caught in the turning mechanism. I had used a cotton swab to collect the dried blood from the dashboard, sealing it carefully in a plastic vial I'd swiped from the first aid kit. I picked a piece of fabric from the torn hem of her dress off the floor mat and added it to the bag. They call it the trap of contempt. It's the fatal mistake arrogant people make when they look at someone like me. My father and sister looked at me and saw a doormat. A creature so desperate for approval that I would eat the scraps from their table and say thank you. They were so convinced of my stupidity that it never occurred to them to watch my hands. They thought I was erasing the crime. In reality, I was preserving it. I sealed the Ziploc bag, pressing the air out with a hiss. I wasn't the janitor. I was the archivist. And this bag wasn't going into the trash. It was going into the vent behind my dresser, right next to 3 years of tax returns I wasn't supposed to see. I looked at the gleaming Porsche one last time. You're right, Savannah, I whispered to the empty garage. I am cleaning up. I'm just not cleaning up for you. The next morning, I walked into the private care facility, with a latte in one hand and a heavy tote bag in the other. The nurse at the station didn't even look up. Room 304, Rachel? She asked, already buzzing me through. He paid for another week, but he said no visitors except you. I know, I said softly. He wants to make sure she rests. That was the official story. My father, the devoted son, paying for round-the-clock care for his comatose mother. The truth was darker. He was paying to keep her sedated. He needed her alive because the trust fund was in her name. But he needed her silent because the power of attorney he was using was a forgery. I slipped into room 304 and locked the door behind me. The room smelled of antiseptic and fading lavender. Grandma Rose lay in the bed, looking small and fragile against the white sheets, the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen machine the only sound in the room. I moved quickly. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out a saline bag I'd prepared at home, indistinguishable from the sedative drip hanging on the stand. I had spent 3 years learning how to swap these lines without tripping the sensors. It was the only way to give her moments of clarity in a fog of chemically induced compliance. I made the switch, hiding the sedative bag deep in my purse. Then I pulled a chair close to the bed and took her hand. "Grandma?" I whispered. "It's me. It's Rachel." For a long minute, there was nothing. Then, her eyelids fluttered. The fog in her gaze cleared, replaced by a sharpness that terrified my father. She squeezed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Did he make you do it?" Her voice was a rasp, unused but steady. "He tried," I said, my voice trembling. "He wants me to take the fall for Savannah." A hit and run. Rose closed her eyes for a second, a look of profound disappointment crossing her face. "Savannah is reckless," she murmured. "But Arthur is desperate." She looked at me, her blue eyes piercing. "He's been forging my signature on checks for 5 years, Rachel. I've watched him drain the operating accounts to pay for Savannah's lifestyle and his own bad investments. But he's reached the limit. The auditors are coming next month. He needs a massive injection of cash to fill the hole before they look at the books. He wants to sell the company," I realized. "That's why he's so panicked." "He can't sell it," she corrected. "Not without my actual signature. The forgery won't hold up for a sale that big. So he needs a bridge loan. A fast, dirty loan to cover the debt so he can flee before the investigation starts." I looked at this woman, the matriarch who had built an empire from nothing, now lying in a bed being slowly poisoned by her own son. It made me think about the cruelty of rational greed. People think evil is always passionate, a crime of passion, a fit of rage. But my father wasn't angry at me. He didn't hate me. To him, I was just a liability on a spreadsheet. Savannah was an asset. Pretty, charming, likely to marry into a senator's family. I was an expense, the quiet daughter with no connections. In his mind, sacrificing me to save Savannah wasn't cruel. It was just good accounting. "He thinks I'm stupid," I said. "He thinks I'll do whatever he says because I have nowhere else to go." "Then let him think that," Rose said, her voice hardening into steel. "We are going to give him exactly what he wants. You are going to help him get that loan. Grandma, if he gets the money, he wins." "No." She smiled. And it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who had eaten competitors for breakfast in the 80s. "He wins if he gets the money legally. But we aren't going to find him a legitimate banker. We're going to find him a trap." She pulled me closer. "Go to the safe in my library. The combination is your birthday. Inside, there is a file on a man named Sterling. He isn't an investor. He's a forensic accountant who owes me a favor. Call him. Tell him the matriarch is awake." I kissed her forehead and stood up. "I'll handle it. Rachel," she called out as I reached the door. "Don't just survive this. End it." I walked out of the room, my posture shifting back into the slump of the defeated daughter. But inside, my heart was racing. My father wanted a scapegoat. I was about to bring him a wolf. That evening, I knocked on the heavy oak door of my father's study. The room always smelled of expensive scotch and old paper, the scent of power, or at least the performance of it. "Come in," Arthur barked. I stepped inside, shrinking my posture, rounding my shoulders just enough to look like the defeated daughter they expected. My mother, Lillian, was pacing by the window, a glass of wine in her hand. My father was behind his desk, surrounded by stacks of financial reports that I knew were mostly fiction. "Well?" he asked, not looking up. "Did you take care of the car?" "Yes," I said, keeping my voice small. "It's clean." Lillian let out a breath that was half sigh, half sob. "Thank God. If the police saw that bumper." "I have something else," I said, stepping closer to the desk. "I know you need money. For the audit. To cover the discrepancies." Arthur's head snapped up. His eyes narrowed. "What do you know about the audit?" "I hear things," I lied. "And I know we can't go to a regular bank. Not with the current balance sheets. So I made some calls." I pulled a printed profile from my pocket and slid it across the mahogany desk. It was a dossier on Sterling Capital, a shell company Grandma Rose and I had created over the last 48 hours. The website looked slick, aggressive, and slightly illicit. "Who is this?" Arthur picked up the paper, scanning it with disdain. "His name is Sterling," I said. "He isn't a banker, Dad. He's a hard money lender. A shark," my father snorted. "I don't deal with loan sharks. He lends against equity, not credit," I pressed, injecting a tremor of desperation into my voice. "He charges 20% interest, monthly, and he wants a lien on the company shares." 20%? Lillian gasped. "That's extortion." "It is," I agreed. "It's a terrible deal. But he doesn't ask questions. He doesn't look at profit and loss statements. He doesn't talk to auditors. And he can wire $5 million in 24 hours. I watched my father's face. I watched the gears turn. If I had brought him a legitimate investor with a fair deal, he would have been suspicious. He would have wondered why a smart investor would touch a sinking ship. But a predator? A shark trying to gouge him? That, he understood. That made sense. He leaned back in his chair, a slow, arrogant smile spreading across his face. I could practically hear his thoughts. He thinks he's robbing me with that interest rate. But I'll take the cash, fix the books, and then sue him for usury, or just default, and bury him in litigation. I can outsmart a thug. He doesn't ask questions? Arthur asked, tapping the paper. None. He just wants the signature of the majority shareholder. Mom is in a coma, he said, testing me. She can't sign. He knows that, I said. He said as long as you have power of attorney. He doesn't care if she's in a coma or on Mars. He just wants the lien. Arthur looked at Lillian. The fear in his eyes was replaced by greed. He wasn't seeing a trap. He was seeing an escape hatch. He was seeing a way to erase his crimes and keep his kingdom. And he thought he was the one holding the keys. Set the meeting, he said, tossing the paper back to me. Tomorrow. Here. Okay. I whispered. And Rachel? He picked up his pen, dismissing me. Maybe you aren't completely useless after all. I turned and walked out of the study, closing the heavy door behind me. My hands weren't shaking anymore. He thought he was swimming with a shark he could outmaneuver. He didn't realize he had just invited the executioner into his home. The meeting took place in the library at noon. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn against the sun, making the room feel like a sealed vault. My father sat at the head of the long mahogany table, flanked by my mother and Savannah. I sat at the far end, the silent secretary, while Mr. Sterling unpacked his briefcase with surgical precision. Sterling didn't look like a Fed. He looked like a man who owned a yacht he bought with other people's bankruptcy settlements. He wore a suit that cost more than my car, and a watch that ticked a little too loudly in the quiet room. The terms are standard for high-risk capital, Sterling said, sliding a thick document across the polished wood. $5 million. 20% interest. Compounded monthly. Full lien on all voting shares of Whitford Properties. Arthur didn't even read the first page. He just looked at the signature line. Let's get this over with. I have a golf tee time at 3. Dad, Savannah whined, checking her phone. And I have a fitting for my engagement party dress. Can we hurry this up? One moment, Sterling said, his hand landing heavy on the paper, stopping my father from turning the page. Before we execute this, I need to draw your attention to the representations and warranties clause on page 4. It's a federal requirement for this type of transaction. He flipped the page. By signing this, you are certifying 2 things. First, that Whitford Properties has no undisclosed liabilities, no hidden debts, no pending lawsuits, no accounting irregularities. I watched my father's face. He didn't flinch. He knew about the embezzled funds. He knew about the hole in the balance sheet, but he looked Sterling in the eye and smiled. The company is clean as a whistle. Just a cash flow hiccup due to market timing. Good, Sterling said, his face unreadable. Second, you are signing as the power of attorney for Rose Whitford. You are certifying that she is permanently incapacitated and unable to make financial decisions for herself. If she were lucid, this loan would require her direct signature. If you sign this while she is capable of consent, that would constitute elder financial abuse and securities fraud. Arthur let out a short, dismissive laugh. My mother is a vegetable, Mr. Sterling. She hasn't known what year it is since the Obama administration. She's drooling in a bed upstairs right now. Trust me, I'm doing her a favor by managing her assets. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. He spoke about her like she was already dead. He was so confident in his dominance, so sure that he had successfully drugged her into oblivion, that he didn't even hesitate. Very well, Sterling said. He pulled a heavy fountain pen from his pocket and set it down next to the document. Sign here. Here. And initial the warranty clause. Arthur picked up the pen. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at his wife. He looked at the check Sterling had placed on the corner of the table, the $5 million that would solve all his problems. He signed his name with a flourish. The scratch of the nib against the paper sounded like a scream in the quiet room. Arthur Gerald Whitford. He dated it. He initialed the clause, certifying that his mother was incompetent and his company was solvent. With those 3 strokes of ink, he hadn't just taken a loan. He had committed 2 distinct felonies on a federal document, witnessed by a forensic accountant wearing a wire. He capped the pen and sat back, a smug grin spreading across his face. There, he said, sliding the papers back. Done. Now, give me the check. Thank you, Sterling said, gathering the papers. He didn't reach for the check. That concludes the business portion. My father frowned. What are you waiting for? The wire transfer. I stood, my chair screeching across the floor. Actually, Dad, I said calmly. We're not waiting for the wire. Arthur glared. Sit down, Rachel. I'm just serving tea. I poured Earl Grey into fine china and crossed the room past my parents, past Savannah until I reached the wheelchair in the corner. Your tea, grandmother. Arthur scoffed. She can't hear you. Then the woman in the chair lifted her head. Grandma Rose turned slowly and fixed Arthur with a razor-sharp stare. She accepted the cup, took a deliberate sip, and broke 3 years of fake frailty with 3 words. Thank you, Rachel. Perfect. Arthur staggered. Mom, you rush when committing felonies, she said coolly. She's sick, he stammered. The doctors said what I paid them to, Rose replied. You forgot who I am. Silence isn't weakness, it's data collection. She rolled forward. You thought I was furniture. I was the jury. Arthur spun to Sterling. The contract's void. Sterling calmly set a gold badge on the table. Correct. But your signature isn't. I'm a forensic accountant with the FBI. You certified she was incapacitated while she sat right there. That's fraud. Elder abuse. And attempted grand larceny. It's entrapment. Savannah screamed. We didn't make him lie, I said. We just handed him a pen. Arthur sneered and pulled out his phone. I deleted every financial record. No data. No case. The room froze. I placed a black hard drive beside his phone. You made me run backups every Friday, I said. This one's from last night. The FBI already has copies. Sterling nodded. Shell accounts. Forged checks. 10 years of fraud. Arthur collapsed. You stole my company. I saved it. He lunged at me. Police burst through the doors and tackled him mid-air. Lillian was arrested next co-signer on 53 transfers. Savannah begged. Rachel, help me. I handed an evidence bag to an officer. That clears up the hit and run. She screamed as they dragged her away. We're family. No. I whispered. We're not. When the house finally emptied, Grandma Rose smiled at me. Well done. The cleaning's over, she said. Now we build. 2 weeks later. I pushed her through the garden. The board confirmed your appointment, she said. The company will recover. I burned the power of attorney in the fire pit and watched it turn to ash. For 27 years I thought I was spare. Turns out I was holding the ace. If you're fighting in silence,